Anyway. And you sure you started doing what you were watching.
Good morning.
So, where were we last time? Around 100 or something like that?
I think you stopped at 90 is what I have in my notes.
Oh, 90. Okay.
But I could
Are
be
you
wrong.
feeling any
Anybody
better,
else?
Dr. Lye?
Hmm?
Something.
Are you feeling any better?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Where?
I think we did the alcohol and cards.
Yes.
Children can't help crying when sandcastles crumble.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Mm.
93. So we did.
And we did do 95, I remember that.
Okay, so maybe it's.
Yeah, around 96 maybe.
98. Somebody says 98 is where we stopped.
So 95, 96, they are a pair. Basically, if we see yeah, 95, 96 is a pair. So basically, especially in this chapter, Shantideva, you could say, is offering us thought experiments. Maybe best to think of it that way. Sometimes, because it's such a, when we are working with such a kind of famous, well-regarded text, at least among Buddhists, and maybe even beyond, people who have been exposed to this know that it's greatly valued and a very important text for many Buddhists. So sometimes we take a kind of very heavy attitude towards the text, and we perhaps even kind of approach it like, it carries this like very important weight, like the God and his commandments. I often say to people, like, as we begin our interest and exploration and learning of the Buddha's teachings, not only are we learning potentially a new body of material, and so not only do we have to do that, equally important is how we do that. And so the how we do that, is equally important. Otherwise, right, even in the how we learn something, it can affect what we end up learning. So not just the material, how we approach the material is something that we have to learn to be sensitive to and to learn over time. So all the baggage that we may have, with things that, like fall under the category of religion, and even fall under the category of philosophy, all these assumptions that we have, as to what is religion for, what is philosophy for, what is a way of life for, what is spirituality for. Much of that, we bring already to the reading, to the material. I'm not saying that all of that you bring is wrong, or that you have to throw them all out, which is not possible. But we need to be alert and aware to potentially how we are hearing this may not be how they are intended to be heard. And how we are hearing this has a lot to do with our own conceptual frameworks. So here in this chapter with Santideva, I feel that it is best that we think of it not so much as Shantideva making any kind of final pronouncement about the truth with a capital T. Best not to approach it that way. Best to first approach it. Now, over time, when you become convinced that it is true, maybe small t true, and then over more time, you become more and more sold or convinced that, yes, it does reflect capital T truth. Great, but you don't have to start off that way. And you maybe also should not start off that way. Because they were not given with that understanding. And in fact, they were given as, as what I would call thought experiments, as in by engaging with them as thought experiments, it can help us shift the way we have habituated certain ways of looking at things, certain ways of considering what is in front of us. Then we become locked into that way of thinking, that way of framing things, not at all allowing the possibility that this may be understood in a different way, and therefore experienced in a different way, and therefore resulting in a different experience. And so all of that I believe to be what Shantideva, the author of this text, is interested in doing. Is to help us be more open to there are other ways of looking at this. And he does that in this chapter, especially through the use of reasoning. And this reasoning sometimes may even kind of feel, kind of funny, if not absurd. But it is based on reasoning, He is inviting us into consider it this way. What will happen when you look at it from this way? So meaning, in any way, in any of these, when he's asking us, you should look at it this way or that way, for sure you can come up with, well, equally, I could also look at it at that way and that way. Of course. But if you're just going to argue with him for the sake of arguing, right? And not like saying, I'll try looking at it the way you are suggesting, and try doing that, and then see, is it making some shifts for you? Is it making some changes for you that ultimately that you find to be helpful to your developing of a sense of well-being, to your safeguarding of your heart, and therefore to your being more capable, more able to be present in a skillful way, in a helpful way for all the others that are in your life. Which is where we have to start. All the others that are in our lives in a more immediate way. Whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's work, whether it's neighbors, whether even, fleeting encounters. So this is what, I feel is important for us to understand as we go through Shantideva's reasonings, and sometimes even feel like teasings, like he's teasing us. and you know, saying, "Oh, come on." But don't hear it in such a heavy-handed way. Don't hear it like, you know, God is making pronouncements about what we have to obey and what happens when we fail to obey. So anyway, so this chapter is the chapter on patience. So it's important here to understand that when we say patience here, this is not like, you know, like, you know, like suppression type of patience. But this is a kind of patience that is informed by trust. You could say that. Trusting that there is a bigger context to whatever unpleasant things that have turned up. That is often when we feel like I need to be more patient. Trusting that whatever turns up, right, there's a bigger context to understand what it is that has turned up that we find to be unacceptable, we find to be unreasonable, we find to be intolerable. So begins with like trust, you know. You feel like, I don't need to so quickly have an opinion of, you know, oh, this is really bad. I mean, of course, you know, you could feel like, I don't like this. Okay, I'm not asking you to ignore that. Santideva is not asking you to ignore that, to like, you know, kind of, that will be suppressed. But to somehow have this trust that maybe there's another way of looking at this. And then this trust, another aspect of this patience, you know, this aside from this trust is knowing that when I pause and I don't just simply react to things that are currently unacceptable, intolerable, undesirable, that when we pause, we can also use this moment to understand certain things about ourselves, our habits, and then to be in a better place to evaluate, you know, these habits, whether are they really serving my interest or are they undermining my interest. And so you begin to develop some understanding, some insight. And this is, after all, actually what we call wisdom, or an aspect of what wisdom is to be able to allow some space to enter a difficult situation. Once we can wedge some space into a difficult situation, a difficult feeling, a difficult emotion, then with that space, you know, some light can come in, and then some awareness, some understanding can develop. And so this patience is based on understanding arising as well. It's not just brute force suppression. I'm not yelling at yourself, yelling at others to be patient, to be patient. Here in this section of patience, he's talking about how one may consider that those who seemingly are now causing me harm, or at least, you know, standing in my way of getting what I want, that's one group. And then others, you know, and the other group is a little further, but nonetheless, they irk us, as in, They seem to be doing well. They seem to be to be able to have a jolly good time. Meanwhile, here I am. I'm really unhappy. I'm really not in a good place. And so then some kind of jealousy, that we have towards others. And my God kids, they're like, yeah, don't yuck my yum. I learned that from them. Don't yuck my yum. So yeah, so we see people having a good time, we see people doing well, and we're like, right? We feel like we have to yuck their yum. So Shantideva here is saying, no, don't do that. So 99, those who stay close by me then to damage my good name and cut me down to size are surely there protecting me from falling into realms of grief. And so he says, and the stanza above, praise and compliments, which is the opposite of those who damage my good name, right? Praise and compliments actually distract me. It puffs me up, right? So that then I lose my sense of, what is actually going on. I get all puffed up. So these things distract me. And moreover, it saps my revulsion with samsara. Samsara, again, not a place. This earth is not samsara, but the way we exist. The way that we exist that is driven by what we call the afflictive emotions, the poisonous emotions, the painful emotions. When we exist in that way, then we are in samsara. And so one of the first steps we say in seriously taking the Buddha's teachings to heart is to give rise to revulsion towards that kind of existence. The kind of existence that is driven by the afflictive emotions, that the afflictive emotions generate and control and produce and reproduce constantly. We have to see them for what they are and let this sense of revulsion actually arise. But he says here, but then if that's what we want to do or we need to do, then in fact, people praising us, people giving us compliments actually is a distraction that takes away from us being determined that I don't want to exist in this way. I don't want to exist in the habitual way that I have existed, where I'm under the control and the power of these afflictive emotions, of these painful emotions. Meaning, when we're distracted from that, then we forget that I want to jailbreak. I want to be free from this, which praise and compliments keeps us, in line. So every time the inmates, find a way to jailbreak, the jailers come and say, oh, we're introducing Monday night pizzas. And then, it's like, oh, well, maybe it's not so bad. A year ago, they started Wednesday night movies, so now there's Monday night pizzas. Oh, maybe not so bad. So I start to envy others of their good qualities, and thus all excellence is ruined. When you envy others of their good qualities, when you envy others of the good situation that they are in, this is how we ruin, this is how we destroy excellence. Throughout this chapter, Shantideva takes a position that says that when something is excellent, then it doesn't matter if it happens to you or if it happens to others, it is good for all of us. When something is negative, something causes suffering, doesn't matter if it happens to you, doesn't matters if it happens to others, it is causing harm to all. And so, can we see that? So right now we might take this as an article of faith. So there is a place for faith, which could be another word for the trust that I was talking about. Somehow mysteriously, we have the capacity to trust that actually it's not as bad as it is feeling right now. It is not as bad and not as certainly bad as it's looking like right now. There is a bigger picture to look at that I'm not seeing right now. And then the opposite, those who stay close by me then to damage my good name and cut me down to size, surely they're protecting me from falling into realms of grief. And so in some ways, right, the difficult people around us, if we can just shift our perspective of how we have habituated our way of reacting to them, responding to them, they can actually be the catalyst for us to jailbreak. For I am one who strives for freedom, jailbreaking. I'm the one who wants to be free. Don't forget that. I must not be caught up by wealth and honors. How could I be angry with the ones who work to free me from these fetters, to free me from my wealth and honors? Oh, of course, do I want to be parted from my wealth and honors? No, I don't. If I'm, just being honest, right? However, that doesn't mean it's not good or not helpful to have an understanding that as much as I don't want to be parted from my wealth and to be parted from the honors that I have gained or I feel that I have gained rightfully, when it happens, I need not let anger be the response. I need not let anger be the response, even if that may be the most immediate response. Santideva is saying here, keep that in check. Don't be so committed. In the Lye June teaching, some of you know what I'm talking about. It says, don't be so predictable. And this is the meaning. Don't be so predictable as in, afflictive emotions as usual. Our business as usual. Afflictive emotions as usual, driving this vehicle. Don't be so predictable that way. Don't be so loyal to that way of behaving, that way of responding. There's no denying, there is a level that is practical and necessary for us to be in the world, right? To not want to lose wealth, to not want to lose honors, to not want to lose your reputation. Yeah, so it's not saying, throw your reputation to the wind, who cares? It's only saying that when these things are slipping away from you, anger, annoyance, sadness need not be the reaction to it. That these reactions that we have currently, that we call very normal, very understandable, they are not innate. They were programmed over time. That which is programmed over time can be deprogrammed. Often deprogramming, here's the good news, it's a lot easier than programming. One key, delete. But to build, we sometimes feel like only good things are like that, takes so long to build and then toop, one key is gone. Actually, it's not just good things. Bad things are also like that. Usually takes a long time to build, but you always have the option of delete. They, like the Buddha's very blessing, bar my way, determined as I am to plunge myself headlong in sorrow. How can I be angry with them? Oh, can we even see, right, that when our wealth, our honors, our fame, our reputation is kind of slipping our hands, that in fact, it's like the blessings of the Buddhas. Because it's a way to yank us out of our habituated ways of behaving that only bring more confusion and suffering. So how can I be angry with them? I should not be irritated, saying, they are obstacles to my good deeds. For is not patience the supreme austerity? And should I not abide by this? Patience also means restraint, cultivating the ability to restrain oneself. Restrain oneself from what? Restraining oneself from being one's own elephant in one's own china shop. I mean, there's collateral damage, but the first level of damage is your own self-damage. People who work for you, of course, they get damaged. People who rely on you, your family, of course, yes, they do get damaged. But the immediate damage is you are the first one. Can we see that? Right? When we don't practice restraint, we are like, the elephant in our own china shop. Not only that, drunken elephant in our china warehouse. It's disastrous. So restraint is good. And to cultivate restraint with regards to actions that cause harm, cultivating that restraint is an active act of virtue, of skillfulness, of skillful behavior. So in that way, it's very easy. It's not even about doing, it's about not doing. So last week, I remember Steve said, one of the lines that are most inspiring, so far in chapter 8 is be like a log. Just my favorite yoga pose. Be like a log, Be like a corpse, right? That is a pose, yeah. Be like a corpse,
It seems like a lot of this can be covered under a non-duality concept. I mean, if we're not taking joy in others, but then, that is so dual.
Yeah, I suppose.
It just popped in my mind and I knew you'd want to know.
I'm not a fan of non-dual and dual. But yes, you can think of that. I guess I'm not a fan of talking about it. Maybe it's so sacred that when we talk about it, it becomes dualistic already. It's a Zen story of, let's see if I can get it right. One of these, right, enigmatic koans. It said, some guy is, there are various versions of this, but one version, see if I can get it right. You know, one guy is hanging on to his life, clinging to a branch, a tree branch that is extended over like this mountain, perching there and hanging on to his life. And then there's like two mice, I think, somehow chewing away. And then below, oh, so this person is hanging on. Maybe the mice is extra, but this person is hanging on with his teeth, biting on a branch. And someone comes along to ask some profound Dharma question to this person. So the question is raised, you know, should this person answer or not answer?
Should we answer or not? He said they were nice.
If they answer, you know, then if it try to answer, he'll fall to his death. If it doesn't answer, you know, in a way, it's like a spiritual death, you know, not like helping this person. But because it's a Zen story, so it's Shantideva's reasoning doesn't work here. Zen stories want you to learn, at least on some level, Zen stories, I feel, want you to learn restraint in the face of an uncomfortable situation. So they raise these paradoxes, you know, keep you in that space, you know, and then you give rise to frustration, and they say this energy of frustration can burn away your confusions. For I am one who strives for freedom. I must not be caught by wealth and honors. How could I be angry with the ones who work to free me from my fetters? They, like Buddha's very blessing, bar my way, determined as I am to plunge myself headlong into sorrow. How can I be angry with them? I should not be irritated, saying that they are obstacles to my good deeds. For is not patience the supreme austerity? Is not restraint the best kind of spiritual discipline you could have? And should I not abide by this? And if I fail to practice patience, practice restraint, hindered by my own shortcomings, I myself create impediments to merit's causes, yet so close at hand. If something does not come to be when something else is absent, and thus arise, that factor being present, that factor is indeed its cause. How can it then be said to hinder it? So here is talking about difficult situations, difficult people. So restraint doesn't come up, this quality of the ability to practice restraint don't come up until something that challenges us, that triggers us to retaliate, triggers us to, you know, snap back. So basically, he's saying, you know, like you should not be upset that someone has turned up to trigger you. If you understand, aha, here is another opportunity to practice restraint. It's I guess he's like saying, you know, do you remember, like, you sign up for the gym, and why are you angry that there are all these weights around?
I take that personally.
You know, it's like, what the bleep? Why are all these heavy things here? Well, you sign up for the gym, you know? The beggars who arrive at proper times are not an obstacle to generosity. And we cannot say that those who give the vows are hindrances to ordination. And so he's talking to the monks, you know, where reverence for the preceptors who give vows to monks. He says, it is by the fact that the preceptors exist that they can give vows, vows of restraint to those who want these vows. Likewise, he says, you know, without beggars turning up, you know, and these beggars don't even need to be literal beggars. It's basically people who want something from us. In that moment, for all intents and purposes, we think of them as beggars. And when we think of someone as beggar, these days, you know, most of the time is the fact of them needing something is not as strongly in the front of things as, oh, someone wants something from me again. So their neediness kind of is obscured. But the burden they are putting on us is what's often highlighted now. But he's saying, don't be like this, because they are like the preceptors who can give you these vows to protect you. People who need things from us are the ones that are necessary for us to cultivate generosity. The beggars in this world are numerous. Assailants are comparatively few. So now that he's done with, you know, people who need things from us and how we should look at them, he's moving on to harder targets or harder to deal with. Assailants, he says, you know, compared to those people who need things from us, people who would come and, you know, assault us, they're actually very few. And so you could say, I can agree with that, you know, in a kind of Santideva style of like being a little deranged and perverted, he will say, these assailants are comparatively few, and so you should treasure them like diamonds, you know. Assailants are comparatively few. For if I do no harm to others, others do no injury to me. And so he's saying, you know, actually these assailants who come and do harm to you, it's not without rhyme or reason. You may think that is without rhyme or reason, but there is a karmic story there to be told. So you should treasure them. Now, again, I always like to remind others, don't ever use this on someone else. When someone else is being hurt, someone else is being harmed, don't you go tell them, oh, actually, you know, your abusers, your assailants, you know, they are your karmic past, la la la. No, that's not the time. In those instances, you do whatever is within your power to separate, right? The one causing harm and the one being harmed, to separate the two. No question about that. So you cannot use these teachings here, right, to kind of do this spiritual bypassing or even being indifferent to the suffering of others and say, oh, well, what to say, that's your karma. You can't do that. Yeah? Here, use this to yourself, but even using this to yourself, be very careful, right? Don't turn this into like a self-blame. Although Shantideva's language, I admit, can sometimes be sound like he's saying, you have only yourself to blame. Well, ultimately, yes, he is saying that. But you cannot hear that from a position of weakness. Not that I am scolding you for being weak. I'm just saying, recognize where you are. If you're feeling weak and vulnerable, the way to practice this is not to just kind of crudely take this advice and say, oh yeah, I'm to be blamed, I'm to be blamed. It's my fault. No, no, no. You have to go a different route to get to, yes, pile on the blame. Fine, no problem. Yeah, you have to go a roundabout way. Other ways you have to go first to get to a position of being able to take blame, not from a position of feeling being weak, feeling vulnerable, but rather from the weakness and the vulnerability, you have developed strength. And this kind of inner strength is really important to cultivate, to develop. So like a treasure found at home that I have gained without fatigue, my enemies are helpers in my bodhisattva work, and therefore they should be a joy to me. Yay, right? And I suspect if you're hanging out at BS these days, you're feeling that there are lots of enemies. You may not call them that, but you're feeling like the world is overrun with all these enemies. Now they say, oh, they are your helpers in your bodhisattva work. These are the subcontractors that you have hired. Since I have grown in patience thanks to them, so merely having them around just to irritate you, that's not what they are there for. But they are there for the purpose of you developing the ability and the power to practice restraint. Greater and greater capacity to practice restraint. Then you're paying these subcontractors for the right reasons. And so merely having a lot of annoying people around is not the practice, okay? In case any of you go, okay, let me go look for some now. But only if you know how to employ them, so to say, for the purpose that you are employing them, which is to grow your ability to practice restraint. Since I have grown in patience, thanks to them its first fruits I should give, for of my patience they have been the cause. And if I say my foes should not be honored, since they did not mean to stimulate my patience, why do I revere the sacred Dharma, cause indeed of my attainment? So here again, this thought experiment. He says, now you may say, these foes, you need not honor them because they didn't mean. Like on their side, they didn't say, oh, I want to help Melissa to practice patience, so here I am. No, from their side, they're just like, I don't like the way Melissa breathes, so I'm just going to create trouble for her. And he says, they didn't intend it, so why should I be thankful for them? And then he says, well, in the same way, the Dharma also didn't intend itself. And the Dharma itself has no intentions. Of course, the ones who teach the Dharma, like the Buddha, have noble intentions for you. That's why the Buddhas are teaching us Dharma. But the Dharma itself, it says, didn't intend for you this way or that way, but nonetheless, you show so much reverence to the Dharma. He's talking to his fellow monks. But that's the logic that he's using here. So in the same way, the Dharma don't have any mind of saying, I want this, I want that for others. It says you have to also see, even if your foes didn't come because they were concerned about your welfare, they just came to annoy you. And really, why did they come to annoy you? Because they think that's how it will make them feel good, right? And so they are less motivated by how much annoyance they can give you, and more motivated by, in giving you annoyance, how much satisfaction they can get. So don't forget that. It's really not about you. These enemies conspired to harm me, I protest, and therefore should receive no honors. But had they worked to help me like a doctor, how could I have brought forth patience? It says, but they are helping me like a doctor. It's like a doctor, right? Doing certain medical procedures to cause the body to react in a certain way that will speed up healing. I was going to say vaccination, but then, oh no, that's a sensitive topic. Okay, we won't go there. Surgery then, a doctor technically is cutting you up and causing pain. But it's the kind of causing pain, right, that will get your body to heal in a certain way. Thanks to those whose mind are full of malice, I engender patience in myself. They therefore are the causes of my patience, fit for veneration like the Dharma. And so the mighty sage, the Buddha, has spoken of the field of beings as well as the field of conquerors. Many who brought happiness to beings have passed beyond attaining to perfection. And so one of our teachers, Gachen Rinpoche, he often says, all the people that exist out there, you can basically divide them, if you want to divide them, into two groups. They are fields of kindness and fields of patience. Meaning, they either belong to the group that you recognize have been so kind to you, or they belong to those who have helped you develop patience. And sometimes the same person is both. It says basically, can you see that, that there are only these two. And of course you can say, well, there's also this, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this. So the point here is not so much to argue with Santideva, but to say, so if I look at people basically only through these two lenses, how does it improve, my own situation? How might it improve my mental, emotional well-being? And therefore improve my kind of positive impact on people around me. Santideva says, choose this as a way of being in the world. Thus, the state of Buddhahood depends on beings and on Buddhas equally. In order to become awake, to achieve Buddhahood, to become awake, we need not only the guides, the objects of the field of kindness, and those who have shown us kindness, we also need those who help us develop restraint, develop patience. Thus, the state of Buddhahood depends on beings and on Buddhas equally. What kind of practice is it then that honors only the Buddhas, but not the beings who help us develop patience? Not in the qualities of their minds, but in the fruits that they give are they alike. So Santideva said, of course. In terms of the qualities the good qualities they have or don't have, there's a vast difference between awakened ones, Buddhas, and those who are helping us to cultivate patience. But insofar as the result that they can contribute to, then both Buddhas and troublemakers in particular have the same effect on us if we know how to practice. In beings too, such excellence resides, and therefore beings and Buddhas are the same. Offerings made to those with loving minds reveal the eminence of living beings. Merit that occurs from faith in Buddha shows in turn the Buddha's eminence. And so this is giving the logic behind, when we make offerings to those with loving minds, it shows, it kind of highlights those loving minds for us, or the quality of a loving mind, a loving heart. So when we have faith in the Buddha, that builds up faith. And in turn, that shows us those qualities that we can strive for. Although not one of them is equal to the Buddhas, who are oceans of perfection, because they have a share in bringing forth enlightenment in others, beings may be likened to the Buddhas. If of such a gathering of supreme excellence, a tiny part appeared in certain beings, the three rolls made in offering to them would be a very little thing. So even if you gave the entire universe, it pales in comparison to the good that they can bring to you, even as harmers and obstructors. Since there lies in beings a share in bringing forth the supreme and awakened state, by virtue of this parity alone, it is right that I should reverence them. The Buddhas are my true unfailing friends. Boundless are the benefits they bring to me. How else may I repay their goodness but by making living beings happy? And this is another reason to honor ordinary living beings, sentient beings, even in all their confusions and all their messiness, because this is how we repay the kindness and the goodness of the Buddhas. By helping beings, verse 120, by helping beings, we repay the ones who sacrifice their lives for us and plunge into the hell of unrelenting pain. This is referring to all those great beings who have trained themselves from lifetime to lifetime until they become awake, until they become Buddhas. Why were they working so hard? They were working so hard for other beings. So then, when we are able to do things to bring some happiness, short-term and long-term, to these beings, it makes these great beings very happy. For those who have become my lords at times took care not even of their bodies. Why should I, a fool, behave with such conceit? Why should I not become the slave of others? Very strong words here, right? Again, not that it's condoning slavery, but it's saying, you serve others. In the end, Buddhas are happy by the joy of beings. And so this is appealing to, right, a community that already kind of automatically is very good at like making ritual offerings to the Buddhas, offering flowers and incense and water and delicacies and much religious fanfare and all of that. It says, okay, good, that's all very good. But you know what? Nothing makes Buddhas more happy than all of these wonderful offerings that you prepare, than by the joy of beings. They sorrow, Buddhas sorrow and lament when beings suffer. By bringing joy to beings, then I please the Buddhas also. By wounding them, I wound the Buddhas too. Just as there's no sensual delight to please the mind of one whose body burns in fire, there's no way to please the great compassionate ones while we ourselves are causes of another's pain. And this is really appealing to his fellow monks and their already given kind of devotion to the Buddhas, to the great bodhisattvas, which of course we cannot assume to be the case in the new audience, in the Western audience, like Buddhas, bodhisattvas, I don't know. But this works very well, for those who, like their lives revolves or kind of around, their discipline is around these making of offerings to the Buddhas, presenting offerings, cleaning the shrine, filling the water bowls daily as part of daily activity. Here Shantideva is saying to them, all those are good, but really the real offerings you can give the Buddhas is to be good to sentient beings, to protect them, to provide them with the conditions of happiness. So if the opposite happens, the damage I have done to beings, stanza 124, saddens all the Buddhas in their great compassion. Therefore, all these evils I confess today and pray that they will bear with my offenses. That I might rejoice the Buddha's hearts, that I might bring joy to the Buddha's hearts, henceforth I will be master of myself and the servant of the world. And when you have complete restraint, then you become a master of yourself. And there, again, from a position of strength, you have no fear. You have no issues with serving all others. I shall not seek revenge, though crowds may trample on my head or kill me. Let the guardians of the world rejoice. Let them all be happy. And then they say, let the gods, these powerful beings, gods in the Buddhist context, they are powerful, but they are not yet free from confusion. However, they, when they see good happening in the world, they also become happy. And then when they become happy, they like to be around you. And then you are protected that way. Protected from mundane harm, which comes, by the way. And so this is also giving us some understanding of the issue among a lot of Buddhists, in Asia, how to be protected from harm in the kind of mundane way of thinking about it. It says, well, basically, instead of bribing the Buddhas, with a all-you-can-eat buffet displayed in front of the Buddha shrine, better you go make other beings happy. Better you go to serve other beings. Better you go to the soup kitchen and volunteer. That will make Buddhas so happy. The great compassionate lords consider as themselves all beings. There's no doubt of this. Those whom I perceive as beings are Buddhas in themselves. How can I not treat them with respect? This very thing is pleasing to the Buddha's hearts, and perfectly secures the welfare of myself. This will drive away the sorrows of the world, and therefore it will be my constant work. Imagine that the steward of a king does injury to multitudes of people. Those with clear, far-seeing eyes do not respond with violence, even if they can. For stewards, after all, are not alone. They are supported by the kingly power. Therefore, I will not despise the feeble beings tormenting me. Their allies are the guardians of hell and also the compassionate Buddhas. Therefore, living beings I will gratify as subjects might placate a wrathful king. So here basically it's saying, these stewards, even if they're causing suffering, they are not acting with autonomy. They are under the control of the king. What is saying here, and the analogy being made here is, even when you see a certain person causing harm, they are not their own boss. In the moments when they're causing harm, their boss are the afflictive emotions, are the confusions that are bossing them around. And so he says, don't get angry with them. If you want to be angry, earlier in this chapter, he uses this thought experiment. He says, if you want to be angry, if your anger needs to go somewhere, that has turned up and needs to go somewhere, direct it at the very afflictive emotions, the very mental defilements that are the bosses of all those beings that are causing harm, causing trouble to others right now. And yet the pains of hell to be endured through making living beings suffer, could these ever be unleashed on me by all the ire of such a king? And here he's saying, but other people's afflictive emotions actually cannot bring me suffering unless I bite the bait. Likewise, and even if that king were pleased, and enlightenment is something that he could not give me. For this will only be achieved by bringing happiness to beings. So here, don't give in to your afflictive emotions, your boss, your king, right now. But instead, think of the welfare of sentient beings. No need to mention future Buddhahood, achieved through bringing happiness to beings. How can I not see the glory, fame, and pleasure, even in this life, will likewise come? And now he goes back to appealing to our sense of wanting glory, fame, and pleasure. He says, this can be achieved by practicing patience, by practicing restraint. For patience in samsara brings such things as beauty, health, and good renown. Its fruit is great longevity, the vast contentment of a universal king. It seems like maybe you feel like, I thought he said, don't be concerned about beauty, health, good renown, fame, glory, pleasure. Again, don't read any of this, in a very kind of tight way. He's doing recommending these thought experiments that you do. Then he comes back full circle and say, yes, in the end, I know you want glory, you want fame, you want pleasure, you want beauty, you want health, you want good renown, you want longevity. Okay, where are all those things going to come from? And they're going to come from your commitment to be truly good to yourself and therefore know how to be good to others. Finish patience. The longest chapter.
I kind of thought we would
No,
never
no, no.
get out.
The longest chapter is actually meditative concentration. This is the second longest chapter.
The 8 is the longest.
Yeah.
8?
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Boyd, by the way. I try to attend these as often as I can,
Uh-huh.
but I'm glad to finally meet you and thank you for the teaching. I have a question. We talked about this last time I was here, that balancing this need for restraints and I guess not letting the afflictive emotions be the boss, but then very real need to act against unnecessary suffering and viciousness and injustice. And so how do we balance those things? Because we talked last time about what horrible injustices unfolding at scale all around us, and people suffering profoundly at the hands of patent greed and selfishness and all the sorts of pathologies you're talking about. So, I mean, how do I be at once restrained but keenly oriented and disposed to act against suffering and justice? Because it seems like anger is not a good boss, but anger does point me in the case of experiencing injustice in a action, in the direction of taking action, and orients me toward, you know, how other beings ought to be treated, affirming dignity. Does that make sense?
Yes. So the answer, the answer is, well, at least my answer is, I ask myself, first of all, so practically, what can or can I not do? Well, it depends, If I'm aide to the senator, probably I can do more.
Oh, man.
We can hear you.
Patience.
Is he back?
Uh,
Wait,
If
that
I'm,
is on his,
you know,
on your, yeah, here we go.
And-
It's on my screen, but
Well,
just wait, can you hold on, Dr. Lye? We lost connection with
I
our
lost patience for a second.
Yeah.
I had no faith.
television and speakers. I'm sorry.
he had a momentary glitch.
You're getting this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, what is this?
Silence.
What do we make about this answer that we?
I was saying that this is the Zen answer.
Zen.
This
Go on.
experience, and I mean, you can't open our
Your
mouth.
answer was muted by our technical glitch. Okay.
I was going to give the wrong answer. Are we good now?
Well,
Not really.
the system switched the speaker to the laptop, but I'm trying to push it back onto the TV.
I think we will turn this off and back on again. Let's try that. Turn off the TV and turn it back on.
Oh, is that this one?
Yeah.
Sure.
That was perfect.
And then try that, turn up again, yeah.
Okay.
I hate technology.
Yeah. That's a great teacher
where
of
was-
patience.
Yeah, isn't it really?
I will say.
There we
Wow.
go. Hey, we're back.
Okay.
We're back?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
back. Thank you.
Yes,
Sorry.
as I was starting to say. So first step, at least for me, I think of it this way. Practically speaking, all of us are in different situations and capacities to literally do something about it right now. almost all of us, not all of us, I'm in the category of not one of us, who can vote. So there's that. Yeah. But immediately, right now, every one of us are in different situations, and limitations as well. And yes, possibilities. But sometimes even the possibilities, I think, is overemphasized. I need to do something. You can do something. Okay, what? It's not very inspiring to hear that, but it's truth, right? That's why I said, if you were working in some senator's office, you are maybe in a little bit better, or actually way better position to actually do something. Or if you are on the forefront, being one of the agencies, working at one of the agencies that is up until this point doing things to protect people, and this is being undermined, yes, there is something. But at least as far as I can tell, for the majority of the people that I talk to, they are not in that situation or position. Those are simply the limits, that we are in. Now, does it mean, well, you throw your hands up and say, well, there's nothing else I can do? Well, maybe, maybe not. But there are more limited, impactful, in limit, things that you can do. So you definitely do those things, right? And how do we balance? Actually, whenever we ask that question, how do we balance? We are secretly hoping maybe somebody, give me the formula, give me the formula. But we all know nobody has this formula to be given. If you're serious about it, you throw yourself in it and see what happens. Throw yourself in that situation and then you figure out the balance. The balance can be figured out when your heart and mind is clear about. This I feel that I can say, that when your heart and mind is clear about these teachings, and that is not easy. When your heart and mind is clear, meaning intellectually you are clear, so the mind, then the heart is committed to it. When these two are clear, then the Buddhist texts, don't have a formula or recipe on, and therefore you need this percentage and this percentage. No, then you jump into the situation. You jump into one of the hot hells or one of the cold hells in the classic Buddhist descriptions of the different hells. You jump in there. And you do the difficult thing to do. But again, how many of us in our current situation are in that position? So first,
Dr. Lye,
yes.
could it also be that there's a preference to wanting to be able to be part of something I can't complete or be the margarine instead of reaching my arm out a distance away to serve those within my reach to accomplish something right there?
Yeah, of course.
In that position of marxism that deep, then within that depth, that now I'm frustrated and angry at everything, instead of the needs that are within arm's reach, within our state here, right up the street, sir.
Yes. Last week I talked about, just stand outside of EBS and look across there,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, I often say, I don't know if it's the right thing, but it's what, nonetheless what I believe. I said, sometimes when we think in such big terms, right? Even like in the Buddhist context, all beings, right? I said, okay, that's a great heart to have all beings. And then when you come right down to it, right, set a radius for yourself, and you could increase that radius. That radius could be just 5,000 feet, you know. And if you can make positive impact in the radius of 5,000 feet, then from there to 5 miles, right? That we can do, actually. To change legislation, to change regime, takes a lot more work and a lot more patience and a lot more skill. But even in that picture, right? Even in that picture, thankfully now still, you can vote, right? And of course, we know, the difficulties and the how messed up, right? Without even going into conspiracy theory about votes being denied and this and that, just the way, right? All these gerrymandering. Yes, of course, that's all the problem. But the truth is, right? I live in Asheville, yeah? I see so many people who are kind of, progressives, quote unquote, right? They're all upset and this and that, But the truth is, I know a lot of them did not vote this last time. And all sorts of reasons why they did not. If that one act you cannot do. So I tell this often. I said, when I was a college professor, I live on campus. So and then I was a lot younger then. It's a little bit less maybe strange, for a younger professor to kind of walk around, campus, go to the residence halls and see what people are up to. And so I got to be friends with these resident advisors. And so so every building, had a communal kitchen, although most people just eat in the dining hall, but nonetheless, there's a communal kitchen. And all these RAs, resident assistants and RDs, one of the biggest problems that they have to face is a messy communal kitchen. Everyone leaving the fork that they just used, the bowl that they just ate out of, just dump it all there, And so this was a college that I tell people, I said, some background, so I taught at this college, tiny little college in Asheville, outside of Asheville, called Warren Wilson College. My first introduction sort of to, the style of this school, the students, was in the fall semester, like a month or so into the semester, some students came to me on a Thursday, no, on a Friday saying, I just want to let you know that we may not be in class on Monday. I said, what's going on? They're like, well, we're going to go to, with a group of people, students, we're going to Georgia, and we may not be back on Monday. I said, oh, I thought just, the usual thing. It's like, and basically they said, yeah, because we may get arrested over the weekend, and so we won't be back in time for class on Monday, because they were going to the School of Americas to protest. And it's an annual tradition. The School of Americas is where the CIA trains all the operatives that go undermine democracy in Latin America, undermine left-leaning governments and everything. Terrible, terrible things that we have done in the name of, like, protecting freedom of blah, blah, blah. Anyway, these students, so they're all very activist minded, so that's the background too. Now back to the residence hall. And I suggested to some of the resident advisors. I said, y'all need to make this sign and put on top of the sink above there. It says, if you can't do your dishes, you can't save the world.
Beautiful.
Right?
Beautiful.
If you can't do your dishes, worrying about saving the world is just an abstract. Clean up your own act. And do that with a concern about others. See how I myself live. It may be a very small one, but then I'm also very small. So visions of grandiosity surrounding us could just be another ego trip, right? So sometimes it's also skillful. Other times we are called to inspire ourselves to do amazing things. But at other times it's also good to see how I'm very small, but then in this smallness, even no matter how small I am, if I don't pay attention, even just leaving out, right, a bowl can negatively impact someone. That I can stop, but I don't want to stop. I want to have a talk with you. Why do you get so annoyed when there's an unclean bowl around?
Can I follow up briefly?
Yes.
Oh, I don't think this will be my last question. I mean, my perspective is that it just can be both and. Like what I think of those protesters, and I think of like in terms of a tangible power that's achieved anything. I mean, most of the people protesting, let's take, I mean, the most visible, and I think the most, I guess, consequential protests of the last 2 years, the protest against genocide in Palestine, and our government's facilitation of that. Like, when I think about these things, I mean, yeah, it's impossible to imagine how I or any other, grassroots collective is going to have power to change this situation. But I'm deeply grateful that there are so many people who are committed to not letting this issue, be covered by silence, continuing to disrupt. They're led by anger. It's in many ways an anger-led movement, but it's an anger against our government's direct facilitation of the worst possible things that humans can do to each other. And so it just feels like and I know that your perspective aligns with this, but it just feels like a both and to me, in the sense of, yes, I've got to do the work of like uprooting the 3 poisons and the other afflictive emotions within my heart in order to help liberate others from suffering and help liberate others from those afflictive emotions itself. But in a time where like we don't know what to do, and such heinous evil and viciousness is being perpetrated against so many beings in our name and in the name of so many people around the world, I just like, there's a restlessness in me which needs to be reckoned with, but I feel that I reckon with it through action. And even if, I don't necessarily agree with, I guess, the centrality that unmitigated anger is given in a lot of justice movements. I do completely understand it, and I think it's a fuel for standing up against suffering caused by, I guess, unrestrained greed, among other things. So like I like, people are not accomplishing the tangible results that they want. And like you mentioned these progressives, many of whom didn't vote. Why? I mean, I know a lot of them who didn't vote because they didn't see either party really committed to standing up for the rights of all people, and they thought they found themselves in a lesser of two evils situation in which evil was substantially evil, that they were not willing to engage with either party. And I deeply understand that. I mean, I feel like we live in a world and in a country particularly where systems are so broken that people don't know what to do. And I mean, we've got to do something in terms of acknowledging it and, you know, taking to the streets and disrupting and saying that, you know, like, yeah, like evil reaches a point where, you know, I'm a Democrat, but I'm ashamed of how the Democrats have claimed to be a party that champions human rights for all people and allowed a genocide to unfold. And so, like, what do people do in these situations where systems are so broken, you know? And I know that's a question that's like, it's a question that is, I guess, beyond the scope of just like one text to give us answers in, but I there's just a restlessness in me that I struggle to.
I mean, he literally just taught on that, though. He spoke and said that when one person struggles or does wrong, everyone is punished. When one person does well, then everyone does well. So literally Monday morning, there will be a child here in Little Rock that's going to go to school without breakfast.
Right.
By you reaching out and feeding that one child, you are in fact affecting everything that's happening in that larger spectrum.
I want to pause this conversation because our time is up.
Oh, yes.
I think you'll come to the next group. And it's a really great discussion that I think we can come back to in this group, and if everyone agrees, and give it the due process that it deserves. But Dr. Lye, I know we have to let you go too.
Thank you.
And do you think you'll be back anytime between now and when you leave the country again the next time, or what are you thinking?
The goal is to, you know, the goal is to meet on Sundays, you know.
Okay, so you maybe next Sunday you'll be here, right?
Next Sunday is possible. The following
Yeah.
Sunday is absolutely not possible.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so that much I know.
So I just want to say is, I haven't consulted with Melissa, but as this group,
Yeah.
we can certainly revisit this topic. When we're sitting here studying Santideva and how to save the world, basically, we can certainly revisit
Yes.
this topic as much as we need to. We're
And I
not
can say,
rushing.
you know, Shantideva's solution for saving the world begins with saving yourself.
Right.
Doing your dishes.
Despite of all the lofty language it uses, you know, it's a system that says you work on what's right in front of you, with an eye towards the bigger. So the restlessness is also it's called being human, and it's a good thing because some of us have hidden that so that the restlessness is not felt. So it's not a bad thing, you know, the restlessness. Yes, the world has improved its ability to cause harm on a big scale very quickly. But that harm is being caused and the trauma that many Americans are feeling, the world has always known this, actually. It's just a rude awakening for many people in the US. And awakening is painful, you know? As long as this pain doesn't become chronic, but the pain can be routed, you know, as Santideva talks about, you know, can be routed to a better outcome, then, you know, the pain has meaning. Yeah? At the first election, the first time that Donald Trump was elected president, very quickly in Nashville, so we had a gathering at the Buddhist Center, and so everyone was expressing shock and, you know, all of that, and expressing the concerns and fears, you know, at the first. And in the group, we had a person there, a woman of color, and she spoke, you know, kind of, you know, to this day, I remember what she said. And she said, I'm sorry that all of you are now seeing this. And she said, but you know, nothing has changed from me and my community. We have always known this side of America. And that was very strong, you know, but I think it was also very true, you know. She said, I woke up yesterday and I woke up today, the same America, not much has changed, she said. So on the one hand, you know, it may seem like such a downer, but then it's sobering, right? That in some ways, this is not new at all. It's just that we are now newly exposed to. And all of that, you know, coming back to Santideva, boils down to the afflictive emotion. So one quick footnote, just because anger brings pain, in this system is not saying, oh, therefore, just throw away anger. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that, you know? Yeah, so there's no problem, you know, in a way with that, you know, you're feeling angry and you need to do something. Well, what matters now is, okay, what are you going to do? Can what you do bring value to the anger? That's what, yeah, it's not, oh, you're angry, bad person. Yeah, it's different, you know, the way we understand sins. Yeah? And in a God-based system, you know, how sin is understood, or whatever, right? A God-based system say is not good. In those systems, then anything and everything to do with it, you have to throw away. Here, the Buddha's way of understanding the afflictive emotions is not because afflictive emotions harm, throw it all away. It doesn't work like that. And also no expectation that you deal with it in this way. Yeah. Okay, ta-ta, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh?
Bye, Steve. Have a good rest of the day.
Bye. I thought it was a great session today. This part of the book was not that easy for me, and Dr. Lye's help was really, really appreciated.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
Okay.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye, Steve. Bye.